recording now.
Okay.
Welcome to the Composer's Corner. This is Me to TV, and today we have a super special young man who is one of the most rounded composers I know. Not just rounded, but just really excellent. Great orchestrator, handles it all. He's a young guy. I'm ashamed to tell you how young he is, but I'll tell you. It starts with a 1 and it ends with a 9. So he's 19 years old. So I'm going to say hello to Alexandre Manoukian, and this is what he looks like.
Hi, TC.
Hey, Alexander, how are you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really good, and I'm
Great.
so happy that you are here today. You're going to be here for a couple months, and we're going to do all kinds of fun stuff. And this is the Composer's Corner, and you flew all the way from, was it Geneva?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your trip here.
Oh, well, it was a lot of fun. I mean, it's a plane, so it's what happens in the plane. But I took some stuff with me to work with and some movies to study some score from John Williams, from all that kind of composers. So yeah, I would say a lot of fun.
Well, you're actually working on a movie right now.
Yeah.
It's like I saw a couple of scenes from it. It looks like quite a cool film along the lines of Avatar,
Yeah.
right? And so is that something you can talk about a little bit?
Well, of course. As you said, it's a movie like in Avatar style, so it's something adventurous, science fiction. Yeah, I think it can be interesting for me because it's one of my first movie in that kind of style, and I can't wait to write some score like a big orchestra, big stuff, and to learn how to do that in the right ways.
Well, that sounds fantastic. So it's going to have a big score. It looks like, at least what I heard.
Yeah.
was very big. I mean, that would sound like the London Symphony or something like that, which is quite a fun orchestra to stand in front of. I know because I did it, and I can't wait to see you doing it. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions.
Yeah, sure.
And if you don't mind, I want to get specific. And today, I'd like to talk about Hans Zimmer. You're pretty familiar with Hans, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I like what's he doing, and it's very interesting to hear what he has to say about his work and how he works.
Yeah, awesome. And then I'd like to talk about John Williams, but from the context of comparing the two. So let's start with Hans, and maybe a specific score that you like or that you want to talk about. And I have a couple questions that I want to ask you too.
Yeah, sure.
So, okay? So
Well,
tell me about Hans.
Well, I think that Hans, what I found interesting with him was the way he worked and the way he approached the movies. So I mean, how he finds the scene, where to write music, and how he approaches it. And I learned something very interesting about him is that when he writes a movie, music for a movie, he doesn't read the script first. He asks the filmmaker, the director, to tell him the story, and then he imagines the music. And so I think it was very interesting to see his point of view about that. And then when you see his work, like for example in Interstellar, it was very interesting to see you can imagine the movie without the music, and then when you add the music, it gives a total, total different idea of what it could have been by just reading the script. You see, it's like because the script is just sentences. When you have the director talking about his movie, it's a complete other things because it's talking with his feelings and with his heart. So I think that was something I learned from masterclass and very interesting things.
So when you have a film or for a film and talking to the director, you're going to maybe take from that and say, I don't want to read the script. I'd rather have you tell me the story.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's. I think that if Hans Zimmer does that, he has a good reason to do this. So I think it can be a good example to follow to do the same thing. So that's what I did actually with the movie I'm doing now. I went in Paris to meet the director, and he told me a lot about his movie. And I first read the script because I didn't know about that thing from Hans Zimmer. And when he told me, the director told me his story, it was totally different from the script because I got one idea and he had another one, and it just changed completely my mind about the movie.
Wow, well that works out. So Hans is a very interesting guy. I think I have a tremendous amount of respect for him because he I don't know how good of an actual composer he is. I know he's a great music producer, but it doesn't even matter from my perspective. What matters is that he ends up with fantastic scores, and I think the first score that I remember was Driving Miss Daisy, which is a very light score, clarinet based. And I always had one question, and I don't know if you know that answer, but there was a scene, maybe several scenes, where Miss Daisy is being driven, and I'm hearing what sounded like a click track, and I'm wondering if Hans, because he is a quirky guy, he can do some stuff,
Yeah.
crazy things. I wonder if he heard that click track and said, just print it. So if you ever meet Hans, I want you to ask him that.
Oh.
Don't tell him you questioned it. You can tell him this other guy that had that. He'll probably tell you, he would. So and now you are in Georgia now, and you're going to end up seeing Trilith Studios, which is where a lot of big movies are scored, and hopefully, and then go to LA from here, and meet with hopefully the heads of music at Disney and some other people that we're arranging meetings with for you.
Yeah.
And you're going to have a lot of music, so I think it would be great if in this section of our podcast we could play a couple of minutes of your music. So I want to do that, okay?
Sure.
All right, great. Great, unbelievable stuff. Now, what are you using to score? Are you using Note Performer?
Yes, I'm using a Sibelius with the Note Performer 4 now, and I think the sounds are getting more and more close to the real sound of an orchestra. It gives the chance to people like me to show to the world what I'm able to do without giving the score or having to buy an orchestra, and it gives the opportunity to a lot of people to do that. So it's
wonderful.
great.
Yeah, just absolutely incredible. And so I think we're going to have to feature more of your music because it's so interesting. But before we do that, I would like to have you talk a little bit about John Williams, because I know you've studied what he does quite a lot.
Yeah.
And actually, I would say out of all of the composers that I know, you're probably the one that can, no, I don't want to say emulate because it always sounds like you, but you can do his style. You can actually compose in John Williams' style, which is an amazing achievement. And that's just, I don't want to pigeonhole you either, because people hire you because, we want you to write like John Williams. I want him to write like you instead.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because that takes a lot of work to get to that point. So what can you tell us about John Williams that you think the audience, your people out here, are going to want to know a little bit more about?
Yeah.
Like how he approaches a film, or does he use electronics, or not?
Well, I've learned that he uses electronic, but not as he uses that as an instrument inside the orchestra. Like he uses the synthesizer, like he will use like flute or nobo or things like that. He even used some electric guitar sometimes, some voices that I don't know how he does that. He just finds some sounds, interesting sounds that fit in the movie at the right place, and it gives an atmosphere that sometimes you cannot achieve with just an orchestra. I said just, but with an orchestra you can already do a lot. Yeah. That's for the score, because I don't think he uses that for the themes where, for example, I don't think it will fit in when E.T. flies in the bike, I don't think he will do that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think he uses very interesting sound and can do very interesting things, but just with the orchestra, and I like that.
Yeah, I think that's great. Are you familiar with most of his scores? The reason I'm asking you is because there's a score that he did for a movie called JFK. Yeah. Was a lot more sound sculpture, it sounded like. I think there was a lot of orchestra in it, but it seemed like he did use kind of what I call sound sculpture, sort of background pads and things. Do you know anything about that score?
Well, of course, I know. I'm less familiar because when we say John Williams, it's the big score, Star Wars, Indiana Jones. But of course, I watched all those movies. Even the Saving Private Ryan has the John Williams style, where the music is less big, less orchestra. But he always uses, it's John Williams when he writes something, it can be whatever. And the fact that he uses some synthesizers, some, as you said, those kind of sounds, he always uses like John Williams would do, because he knows exactly what to write and where to write that music, so it always fits very well, and that's he knows what to do at what moment, and I think that's one of the best.
Yeah, he's truly amazing composer. Yeah, there's a couple of other scores that he's done. I know his background has got to be part of the reason for his success. I mean, a big reason. Everybody's background is important for their success, but in John Williams' case, and maybe you can fill in a little bit of the background. I think he's a piano player, correct?
Yeah.
And is he was a jazz pianist?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he even made. I know he even made a whole album with a jazz arrangement of a lot of songs. The name is Rhythm in Motion. I think it's from the 60s, before he made all that stuff, and you can already recognize that he's got the beginning of his style, with all the triads, all that stuff. It's very interesting to see that his style that in the Star Wars score, Indiana Jones, all that stuff, was already beginning in the 60s when he was writing something for the jazz song, for real book songs. It was very interesting to see how he treated that, and then how he changed to. We evolved. The word is evolved to the score, the orchestra stuff.
Yeah. So what was the name of the album again? Because I want to get that out.
Oh, it's Rhythm in Motion.
Rhythm in Motion.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So it's very difficult to compare two big composers like that, isn't it? I mean, how would you even go about it? I guess it would make a difference in how you study them. Because John Williams, you'd study scores, but a lot of the Hans stuff, I don't think the score would be as necessary as just watching a movie and observing how Hans places the music and spots the music and times it out. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, sure. I think, as you said, I would study John Williams for the music, writings and that stuff, and of course how he places the music in the movie. And Hans Zimmer will be more of course, about how he places the music, but the atmosphere he gives, because it's two words, but in the same bigger one. You see, it's like they do the same job, but not the same way. So it's interesting to see the two sides of the same coin. You know, it's of course I studied John Williams a lot for his score, for his music, and it helped me a lot developing my skill in the harmony, all that stuff. But for Hans Zimmer, it's about the atmosphere, what you can get from the image, what the image says, what it doesn't say also. And of course you can find this in John Williams, but I mean in not the same way, and of course they don't do the same kind of movie, so you can just learn from those two big composers, but different ways. And I think it's fabulous.
I think that's a great insight, and people are going to absolutely love it. Well, let me ask you, I'm hoping you're willing to come back and we can do some more of these podcasts, because I want to ask you about all kinds of things, including some music theory questions and stuff like that. By the way, I want to tell you today, when you were playing the piano, I was sitting out on the porch. Of course, we have a beautiful atmosphere here. And I ended up falling asleep, not because I was bored, but because I enjoyed the playing. You know, it was fantastic. So I want to thank you for that, and thank you for hanging at the Composer's Corner for Meta TV. So having said all that, thank you folks for watching. This is the first podcast with Alexandre Manoukian.